Good evening, folks, and welcome to the live stream. I hope you're all very well this evening. I hope you had a wonderful week and you're ready for some crazy stuff this weekend. It started off pretty crazy because Lucy Connolly has been released from prison, and instead of spending time with her family, which her supporters constantly banged on about, she's doing the rounds of the media. So we'll get to that in just a moment. Immigration numbers are creating a bit of a headache for Keir Starmer. Jeremy Corbyn has jumped in on the issue of asylum hotel usage. There is a famine, of course, being declared in Gaza, and Donald Trump is going after his enemies, it seems. So there are some of the stories we're going to cover tonight. Guys, make sure to smash the like button if you can, and I want to say thanks to the moderators for doing a wonderful job in advance before we join. If you want to join me, I will be excuse me, I'm losing my voice already. It's not a good sign. If you want, I'll be on the post-stream chat tonight after the live stream for about an hour. So if you'd like to jump on that, if you're a Patreon or if you're a member of YouTube, you should have access to Discord. And if you want, we're having a discussion about what we talked about tonight and generally on the post-stream chat tonight. So do check that out if you can. So let's start off with Lucy Connolly. So Lucy Connolly, of course, was sent to prison for, was it 31 months? Feels like no time. No, it wasn't 31 months. She was sent for about a year to prison. I think she was meant to serve 31 months, but of course she got off before. She was released early, and she's been released this week, today or yesterday, and she's already doing the rounds in the media. And I said this, I knew that she would be either Reform UK would try and get her on at their conferences, or GB News would give her a slot on their show. But she's already giving interviews to Dan Watton. So Dan Watton is this very, how can I say, interesting individual who used to be on GB News, I believe, but got kicked off because of, well, some shenanigans of a sexual nature, I believe. And now he has his own podcast or show, and he, it seems, got an exclusive or semi-exclusive with Lucy Connolly, because Lucy Connolly is so important. Now, let's have a listen to what she had to say in this clip.
Said twice to JD Vance and Donald Trump that the UK does have free speech. I know that tomorrow you are intending to meet with a representative of the American administration, but before that, what would your message be to the president and the vice president? Does the UK have free speech?
I don't think so, no. And that's becoming increasingly apparent, isn't it? Well, how many people are still in prison for similar thing and that's what I said earlier. We need to remember that there are still other people in prison for a similar thing.
There are other political prisoners.
Other political prisoners.
Wayne O'Rourke.
So I would like Keir Starmer and CPS and any of these people that had a hand in this to tell me exactly what are they achieving by putting the likes of me in prison and Wayne O'Rourke. What are they gaining apart from an absolute minimum of £55,000?
No, excuse me. I'll let it run to the end and then I'll respond.
A year bill to the taxpayer. What's being gained?
And what have you been told about this meeting with the Trump administration tomorrow?
Not much, just that they're very interested in the way things are going in the UK, and they're obviously big advocates for free speech, and their lawyers are keen to speak with me.
The grift was pretty quick. I wasn't expecting her to jump on the grifting bandwagon so soon. I thought she'd at least give it a few days. You know, she spent so much time in prison and her supporters kept banging on about how she's away from her family. Why isn't she spending time with her family? You know, if you were so desperate to be with your family, the first thing you'd be doing is saying, look, I want to be with my family. Maybe after a week, I'll start doing interviews, but my priority is my children. But it doesn't seem to be the case. Anyway, so she's going to meet with the Trump administration to talk about free speech. Are we living in some sort of simulation? This is an honest question. Do we actually live in some sort of alternative universe, or are we living in the Matrix or something like that? Because this doesn't make any sense to me. You have somebody who pleaded guilty, like she keeps being presented as some sort of political prisoner. She's no Nelson Mandela, okay? She pleaded guilty to incitement. and she went to prison. She wasn't put away by Keir Starmer. And this is the whole narrative. Keir Starmer put me away. The blob put me away. The liberal elite put me away because I was speaking the truth. I was standing up. But if you truly believe that you are innocent, then why did you plead guilty? Now, I'm not buying all this sort of rubbish that we keep hearing from her supporters. She was forced, or she was tricked, or she had to do this in order to avoid a prison sentence, a longer prison sentence, and she had no choice. No, she had a choice. If she truly believed she was a political prisoner, like, compare this to, I don't know, Bobby Sands, for example. Compare this to the hunger protest. Anyone going on hunger strike. Like, hunger strikers don't generally, when they're going into prison, don't normally plead guilty, okay? They fight. She didn't fight. She pleaded guilty in order to get a lesser sentence. Like, we will never know if she was actually truly innocent because it never went to trial. This is the problem. See, the people on the right are trying to push it. Well, she did nothing wrong, or she was innocent, or she was a victim of two-tier policing and stuff. But she pleaded guilty. She has nothing. She has nothing to stand on. She hasn't a leg to stand on here because she admitted guilt. And as soon as you do that, then you waive your rights to a trial. There is no trial. If she has pleaded not guilty, it would have gone to trial, and then there would be the possibility to discover whether she was guilty or not guilty. But by default, there is no trial because she admitted guilt. See, it would have been a lot easier for the far right and her supporters if she had pleaded not guilty, and then it went to trial, and then she was either acquitted or she was sent down. But we'll never know. We will never know if she was innocent. Sorry, guilty or not guilty. Truly guilty or not guilty, because she removed that option for us. Brad, thank you so much for that super chat. The release of Lucy Connolly has caused a surge in in nationwide tissue sales, with a usually high concentration in the Durham area. My hands are above the table, unlike Darren Grimes. Oh my goodness, yes. Thanks, Brad. But she's been portrayed as some sort of political prisoner. Political prisoner. You had a track record that was used against you, that was about to be used against you, when it came to fascist Max. Far right doesn't cut it anymore. No, yeah, they're fascists. They're basically fascists. But you pleaded guilty, so you don't have anything to go with. Like, the idea that she's some sort of political prisoner, that she was put away by Keir Starmer. Keir Starmer went after her. No, then why did she plead guilty? Why didn't she fight her case? Now, this thing about meeting with the Trump administration, what the heck is that about? I'm going to meet with the Trump administration because they care about free speech. The Trump administration cares about free speech. The same Trump administration that has refused entry to people who have, because they wrote things that Donald Trump didn't like on social media. People who were deported because they wrote stuff on social media that Donald Trump didn't like. People who have been sent to gulags without due process. And she wants to meet with them. This would be like meeting with, I don't know, Pinochet or something, and saying, I want to meet with Pinochet because Pinochet is somebody who understands human rights. No, he doesn't. He's the opposite of that, in the same way as Donald Trump is the opposite of freedom of expression. Now, are there issues of freedom of expression in the UK? Of course there are. We saw what happened when it came to people protesting during the pro-Palestinian marches, the people holding up the signs in support of Palestine action. They have been arrested. 500 people were arrested in one day, I believe. No mention of that when it comes to freedom of expression. People literally holding up pieces of paper were arrested. These are not people who are, as far as we know, members of the organization. They're just showing support. And as I've raised before, there's a massive amount of irony here or hypocrisy, I should say, because every 12th of July, there is a march in Belfast and in other parts of the north of Ireland where the Orange Order, along with the support of the UVF, are cheered on by members of the public. The UVF, a proscribed organization, a terrorist organization. They have their flags, they have their banners. Ex-UVF people, if they're still ex, if we can use the term ex with these individuals, march as well. And the Orange Order has got into a bit of hot water over this. Nothing will happen, of course, because for some reason the UVF, a proscribed organization, is allowed to march, while somebody who's holding up a sign that says, I support Palestine Action, those individuals will be sent to prison. And it's serious. It's not like... This is something I never understood, why the government didn't go down this road, which I don't agree. I just think the terrorist route, the prescribing them as a terrorist organization never made any sense to me. It would make more sense, not that I agree with it, but it make more sense to deem it a criminal organization. So support for a criminal organization. I imagine the punishment would be less, but the effect would be the same. It's about having a chilling effect on protest. But it's insane. The far right, the fascists, don't give a crap. They have more. They're more concerned about somebody who pleaded guilty to incitement than people who are holding up signs in support of Palestine Action. Lucy Connolly can perform a duet with Katie Hopkins. The only thing that only dogs will be able to hear the result. Yes. The only thing is that dogs will be able to hear the result. Maybe she'll do her own music videos. That could be a thing. She could have her own TikTok account as well. I'm sure she'll be doing that. Somebody had asked on social media, thanks Freckle Punny. Somebody had asked on social media, maybe she will want to, apologize. And then I said, no, she's married to a Tory. Okay. They don't take responsibility for their actions. In this case, she did because she pleaded guilty, but that wasn't really taking responsibility. She hasn't apologized, as far as I know. In any of the clips I've seen, she hasn't come out and offered some sort of contrition, saying, I was wrong, I shouldn't have done this, I want to apologize to anyone who was offended. No, not even the fake apologies. She's the victim. She's the victim, and she pleaded guilty. Maybe I sound like a broken record, but I need to reinforce this point. She pleaded guilty. As soon as you plead guilty, you're denied a trial. There is no trial. So we'll never know if she was truly innocent because there was no trial. Christy, thank you so much for that super chat. Wants a free t-shirt from Nige. I'm sure she get a free t-shirt from Nigel Farage. Even the signed ones, which cost £99. Here's another thing. Nigel Farage is now selling t-shirts, football shirts. It's like Donald Trump. It's going to get worse before it gets better. We're going to see more and more of this. And it seems that for the conference, for the Reform UK conference, they have on, let me change screen. They have on Jeremy Vine, or Jeremy Vile, as some people describe him. So Jeremy Vine, of course, some years ago, was accused of putting a man who was, I think he had learning disabilities, on his show. A man who was on his show who had learning disabilities, put him under so much pressure that he eventually took his own life. Now, Jeremy Vine is, and of course it was all done for entertainment. It was create a situation where this man is embarrassed, and then it's for entertainment value. Jeremy Vine is a vile individual. I don't know if he's apologized for that, but of course he is the best person to do something for Reform UK, because Reform UK, Jeremy Kyle, I meant to say Jeremy Kyle, not Jeremy Vine. Sorry. Apologies to Jeremy Vine. Jeremy Vine is okay. He can be a bit of an arsehole on a bike, but I mean Jeremy Kyle. Jeremy Kyle is vile. I need to get it right next time. Apologies to Jeremy Vine. He's okay. Max, you're not a broken record, but you could try scratching. she pleaded guilty. I'll do a DJ set. I saw that apology in coming. Honestly, once again, apologies to Jeremy Vine. He's a pretty decent guy. Okay, he pisses people off with his bicycle, but he's not that bad. Oh, great! Now we have to crowdfund legal face for Max. No, it's okay. I think as long as you recount it immediately within a few seconds, you're okay. I'll have to check with my lawyer, which is ChatGTP, on that anyway. Here is another clip with this lady I wanted to show you.
Answers the question, doesn't it, really? Instead of saying, we know you're upset, we know you're angry, but this is not the way and it won't be tolerated. You're all far-right activists and racist and thugs. And, I don't care if you're upset that those 3 children have died. I don't care if you're scared for your own children.
This is what we'd call a straw man. Who said that? See, what she's doing is she's creating this argument. Oh, well, the people who disagree with me were like going, oh, well, we don't care whether the children died, or we don't care about what was happening. We're just going after you. Who are these people? Her supporters will probably say it's Keir Starmer and the government, but in reality, who is it? She doesn't name some names of the people who are engaging in this type of behaviour. No, she won't, because they don't exist.
Children, this is what we're going to do. And, he said it himself, we will remind you, because that isn't standard practice, to remind people like me that isn't a flight risk, that's never, offended before, and was very unlikely to offend again.
So she won't offend again. What is she doing? As soon as she's out of prison, she's doing a circuit where she's playing the victim. So she probably believes that she didn't do anything wrong. And if you don't believe that you did anything wrong, then you're more likely to do it again. I give it a week before she's tweeting again. Maybe she had her account closed down, and that's why she's not tweeting all these things. But, these people don't learn. So what happens is they think that they're the victim, not the people who are in the hotel that was about to be burnt down, that far-right thugs were attacking. No, they're not the victim. I'm the victim. I'm the one who went to prison. I'm the victim here, even though I pleaded guilty. Max, by the looks of this, Scotland needs to get the FIC out of the union as fast as possible. So this bullshit isn't spread to Scotland. It's startling, heartbreaking to see England going this way. Thanks, Viper Scott, for that. Very kind of you. Thanks so much for that support. It is really concerning. As I said before, this is American type of politics being imported into the UK. With Farage with his T-shirts and stuff like that. But also this idea, can you imagine any other situation where somebody pleaded guilty to a crime and then immediately out following their release was interviewed on TV and they played the victim? Like, we have situations where people have been the victim of miscarriages of justice, people who were sent to prison under no fault of their own. But they are people who generally are innocent. Okay? They're people who pleaded not guilty, went to prison. I think of the Birmingham 6 or the Guildford 4 or Nelson Mandela or someone like that. Somebody who was a true political prisoner, somebody who was in prison because of their political views. She was in jail because she was inciting violence. Not for her political views, but because she was in the same way as if somebody was telling people to go down to a local supermarket and burn it, irrespective of what was the motivation behind it, and people were doing that, then they would be guilty probably of incitement. But if that individual pleaded guilty, then they don't have a leg to stand on. But it is concerning because this is infesting the media, it's infesting politics in Britain, and of course Scotland is part of Britain, so there's a risk that it will flow over the border from England into Scotland, and there needs to be some sort of barrier to that. I don't know what it is. The Scots are more immune, I should say, to the attraction of Farage than the English are. But we'll see a real test next year when the parliamentary elections take place. And if the SNP are not able to improve their numbers, there's a risk that Farage could replace Labour and the Conservatives in Scotland and then become a significant force. English nationalists in Scotland, and Farage, of course, selling his wares there as well. There's a real concern there, and I really hope that the Scottish people, I think most of them understand that, but hopefully the numbers come out to keep Farage out. You know, a sort of French-style approach whenever the far right are about to get into power. Normal people go, okay, shit, we need to do something. Let's get out and vote and keep Le Pen or Jean-Marie Le Pen or Marie Le Pen or whoever out. It's not an ideal approach. I'm extremely critical of that. Politicians should be putting forward policies that encourage people to vote for them, not so much just to vote to keep somebody else out. But it is concerning for Scotland and Wales that Reform are starting to make inroads there. I honestly don't understand the attraction of Reform in Scotland or in Wales. In England, people are angry with the Labour government, okay, but it's different in Wales and certainly different in Scotland. But it seems to be the case that the SNP vote is not declining, but what happens is the other parties are struggling because of Reform. So the Conservatives could be completely wiped out in Scotland. Labour could take a massive hit, and because the next choice for many people after the Conservatives is Reform, then Reform will do probably quite well. Not because people are supportive of Reform, but maybe because they're not happy with the SNP, or they're not happy with, of course, Labour and the Conservatives. But we'll have to see polling and stuff on that. But Farage knows all he has to do is say, well, I would make things better. And for a lot of people, that's all they need to hear. You know, when it comes to the union, Farage and Reform has said, no, well, we would not allow Scotland a second referendum. Not allow. It's meant to be a union of equals. I imagine if you were to ask Richard Tice or Nigel Farage, is it a union of equals? They'd probably say yes. But in a limited and specific way, it's a union of equals. But I won't go down that road tonight. Brad, once again, thank you so much, Brad. Don't let Connolly and Robinson near each other. They will have a child and they'll make Putin look like Gandhi. Oh my goodness. Yeah. That would be the thing of nightmares. Nightmare fuel there. Ninja, thank you so much for that super chat. Please, for the love of God, can the media stop stirring the pot with the so-called immigration situation? I'm sick to death of it. It's taken complete and utter hold of the media. Well said, Ninja. You know, I respond to these things because the media is talking about it and they don't want to talk about anything else. We know that the small boats represent about 3%, between 3 and 5% of immigration. 3 and 5%. But you would imagine, if you didn't know, you would imagine it's like 80% or 90%. So it's a very small minority that are crossing the channel in small boats. But the focus of the media is on them. And it's not just GB News and Talk TV. It's also Sky News, Channel 4, the BBC, of course. Because Farage now has to be amplified, because Farage is really important, even though he only has, 4 MPs. Like, when was the last time you heard from Ed Davey? That's an honest question. Ed Davey has, 72 MPs? 70-something MPs in the House of Commons. And when was the last time you heard somebody from the Liberal Democrats? I'd love for people to be able to name 4 Liberal Democrats. Is your accent a hybrid of 2 accents? I think so. It's a hybrid of Irish and maybe Italian. Somebody says it sounds a bit German, but maybe it depends on the words that I'm using. It takes something concrete to reject the lies, engaging with people to win the argument. That's where it matters. It's a very difficult challenge, Suzanne, because Farage, as we've seen, will take clips of what people said. We saw it with Anna Sanwar in Scotland, where he'll take a clip of what somebody said, edit it down to make it sound what he wants, and then put it out and it goes viral because he has a huge platform. So he's able to spread it far and wide. Farage is eons ahead of Labour and the Conservatives when it comes to communications. He's running rings around them. The only person who can come close is maybe Jeremy Corbyn or Zach Polanski from the Green Party. I think they're the only people who can somewhat come close to Farage when it comes to social media impact. But I think if you were to ask the average person on the street, do you know who Zach Polanski is? They'd probably say, I don't. Jeremy Corbyn, they'd probably say, I do. But then Jeremy Corbyn tends to speak to only people who agree with him. And I think that's a major problem he has. He needs to get outside that bubble. But Farage knows, okay, I can go on any media outlet and I'm going to be platformed and I can push my snake oil and it will work. If a few people buy it, that's enough. A few people today, a few people more tomorrow, a few more the next day, then I'm winning. That's all he has to do. And he doesn't even have, I've said this before, he doesn't even need to win power. He just needs to influence power. He just needs to steer political parties in a particular direction. That's what he's doing at the moment. The Conservatives thought we can beat Farage by out-Faraging Farage. That didn't work very well. And now Labour are in a bit of a fix over these hotels. And part of this is on the back of these protests. And who has been supporting these protests? Well, groups, not Farage himself and not so much Reform themselves, but people like Reform. Latest polls, Conservatives 15%, Labour 18%, Reform 38%. The polling is also another thing that we have to be concerned about, because you don't need to get 50% to get 50% of the vote. So you don't need 50% of the votes to get 50% of the seats. We saw that with Keir Starmer's massive majority. He won a smaller share of the vote, 30-something%, and he ended up with 70% of the seats. So you don't need to win a significant number of votes to flip the parliament because of first past the post. And that's why Farage is very quiet about PR, because PR would make it more difficult for him to win a massive majority, because he's actually replaced the Conservative Party. The Conservative Party are pretty much dead. They're on life support, and they're not really going to come back. I said before that they may come back if they can come up with a new leader and somebody who's fresh and somebody has new ideas. But we're talking about the Conservative Party here, so they're not a party who are thinking big. They're not a party who act radically. So it's not in their DNA. So I think it's going to be a case of the Conservatives dying a slow death unless they come up with some new ideas. And Farage Reform UK will replace the Conservatives. So you'll have a situation, unfortunately, this is the situation, where in the past you had the Conservatives and Labour, you're going to have Reform and Labour. Now, I don't know if Jeremy Corbyn's party is going to make that much of an impact. It has a lot of people supporting it. It doesn't seem to... and they're moving very slowly. I really don't understand this. If they want to really have an impact, they need to start working hard now, because they need to have a name, they need to have an executive, they need to have a leadership. The leader needs to be on TV all the time, but we still don't know who the leader is. They haven't selected one. We don't know what the policies are. We don't know who the shadow cabinet would be. So there are a lot of things that need to be done, and the local elections are not that far away. So if they want to win big, they need to have an infrastructure in place. And we don't see that. And it can't all just be online. You need to have people on the ground. And Reform have been doing quite well recently also, because they have seen a massive influx of people joining it. I don't know what they're getting out of it. They're just angry with Keir Starmer and Labour and the Tories, but there are significant numbers of people willing to sign up to Reform and willing to go out and campaign for them. Somebody on the stream was telling me that they had received flyers from Reform in Scotland, in Fife. So that's a bit concerning, with Nigel Farage's picture on it, which is interesting because Nigel Farage would not be the leader of the Scottish party as the Reform Party in Scotland. So they don't have a leader in Scotland. The leader is, of course, Nigel Farage. The same with Wales. They don't have a leader in Wales. So they're not running it's like Boris Johnson and Get Brexit Done once again. The cult of personality. Like Trump, the cult of personality. You're not voting for a policy. You're voting for Nigel Farage. Guys, we're about halfway through the stream, so I just want to take a short comedy moment and then we'll come back in just a jiffy with more serious stuff. This one is really good. I found it online today. a little bit different than what we usually see, but I'm pretty sure you'll enjoy it. Let me bring it up here.
Do you like my suit?
Unbelievable, fella. You've done well.
I'm all for Nigel Farage.
Give us a high five. To right.
I'm a reform.
Same here. So what annoys me is that everyone thinks that reform are all about hating immigrants.
No, it's a load of rubbish.
But I think there's so much more to us than that.
Oh, most definitely. Of course there is. Of course there is.
What other reform policies do you like?
I mean, I can't name off the top of my head.
To be honest with you, I can't remember them all now.
Shall I help you out?
No. Give me a second.
What other reform policies do you like?
Spend more money on the NHS.
That's actually not one of our policies. So we want to cut public services by £150 billion.
Wow. Okay. It's quite a bold statement.
We need to put an end to free healthcare.
Yeah. Do you think so?
We need to protect the wealthiest.
Yes.
So we need to cut the taxes on things like private education, private healthcare.
Yeah.
Protect the billionaires.
Mm-hmm.
Climate change is a myth.
Oh, right. Thank you for that.
So we need to put an end to net zero.
I don't really know too much about all that, but yeah.
I think we should ban protests altogether as well.
Yeah, 100%. Obviously, people have the right to say what they want to say, but
Just do it at home, yeah?
yeah.
Do you like how Nigel supported Liz Truss's mini budget?
Yes.
100%. We support 0-hour contracts.
Yeah.
I don't like all this, like 1 week you're working, 1 week you're not.
Well, that is actually a reform policy.
Yeah.
We want to protect the wealthy. We think it's a good idea to turn this country into a tax haven for the billionaires. That means not taxing their foreign income.
Well, you know, I think we should all pay our fair amount of tax.
Do you think those are all good ideas?
Oh yeah, great ideas.
So you don't get through to everyone, but you get through to some. but this is wonderful. This is what we should be doing. You know, dress somebody up in a Union Jack suit, send him out onto the street. Of course, people who are supportive of reform be like, "Hey, that's one of our guys." I don't know why, but they will say that's somebody on our team, and then just ask them about the policies and explain the policies to them. This is perfect because you're approaching people in a way that they don't feel intimidated. Because if he turned up in a normal suit, they'd be like, "Who is this guy?" And maybe they'd be a bit concerned about speaking to him. But he comes across as somebody from reform, so they're willing to have that conversation with him. Wonderful stuff. Anyway, let's move on. So let me see if I can show you. Okay. Tory member of the Scottish Parliament resigns from party, accusing Conservatives of falling into trap of reactionary politics. This is quite interesting. So Scottish Conservative MP Jeremy Balfour has resigned from the party and will sit as an independent. In his resignation letter, the party leader, Russell Findlay, who nobody knows, Balfour said the Scottish Conservatives have fallen into the trap of reactionary politics and that a positive, proactive agenda for real change has been rejected. Now, I don't know if he was being cynical here and just jumping before he was going to lose his seat, or this is somebody who truly feels, hey, the Conservative Party is going in the wrong direction. We need to avoid Farageism. And we see it with, I'll give the guy the benefit of the doubt. Okay, let's say for the sake of argument, he is supportive of turning the Conservative Party around, returning to its roots, being less reactionary. There's a lot of evidence that it has gone in the wrong direction. Kemi Badenoch, of course, Brexiteer, jumping on so many bandwagons. I don't know how she hasn't got broken legs at this stage. Whenever Farage says something, Kemi Badenoch is right there to either reinforce it or try and claim it for herself. We saw it with the Epping Hotel, the Conservatives right there, Suella Braverman and others claiming a victory. Oh, it's our victory, when of course they knew that when they were in charge, they were against the idea of councils stopping the use of these hotels. So the Conservatives were trying to put people into the hotels. Their councillors were against it, but they were basically giving the MPs were giving the councillors the two fingers when it came to this. That video was almost as good as the one I saw earlier today of the two English women who who had moved to Benidorm permanently, and England is full of the foreigners. It's too full of foreigners, yes. I think that was one I shared as well. Ballflower pronounced Balfair. Sorry, apologies for that. Balfair, not Ballflower, as in the Balfair Declaration of 1917, which laid the ground for the later creation of the State of Israel. I didn't know about that. Thank you so much for that history lesson. Manky Jacket, perhaps, Alistair. What's that about? In Glasgow near Ibrox, perchance. I'm reading comments out of context. It's a terrible thing to do. There's another story I wanted to cover as well. Let me bring it up here. Yeah, so the hotels are going to be a bit of a thorn in the side for the Labour government, because they need to do something about the asylum seekers. They need to move them out of where they currently are. So government takes first step in appealing court ruling banning asylum seekers from Epping Hotel. So remember, this was an interim injunction from the court. So it's a temporary injunction. So it means that it's not permanent, and there is a chance to appeal. But there's a risk that the appeal will fail and the government will be left to pick up the pieces. Now, it makes sense for them not to take any action until the appeal has run its course. But we'll have to wait and see. So the government is seeking to intervene after Epping Forest District Council won an interim injunction to stop migrants from being housed in the Bell Hotel following widespread protests. The Home Office is seeking permission to intervene in the case, which, if granted, would allow it to appeal the interim judgment handed down last week. Epping Forest District Council sought an interim High Court injunction to stop migrants from being accommodated at the Bell Hotel in Epping, which is owned by Somali Hotels Limited. The interim injunction demanded that the hotel be cleared of its occupants within 14 days. In a ruling on Tuesday, Mr. Justice Iyer granted a temporary block, but extended the time limit by which it must stop housing asylum seekers to the 12th of September. I think on the 13th there's some big protest organised. Somali hotels will now appeal against the court order blocking the use of the hotel as accommodation for asylum seekers, the company's solicitors have said. Meanwhile, Security Minister Dan Jarvis said on Friday that closing hotels housing asylum seekers must be done in a managed and ordered way, as he unveiled government plans to challenge the High Court's decision. So what can the government do about this? What is the solution? Well, the solution, of course, is to move people out of these hotels into normal rented accommodation. But of course, the Conservatives and Reform are preparing the next bandwagon. And the next bandwagon, of course, will be, well, we don't want these asylum seekers in the local area. We don't want them in rented accommodation. We don't want them in multiple housing units. We don't want them anywhere. Now, some of the alternatives being presented by the Conservatives and Reform, of course, are using ex-military bases. But then there was the one in Scampton, I think, or Scampson or something like that. I forgot the name. There was one being used, but Tory MPs were protesting against that, trying to describe it as some sort of historical monument. Okay, so that's not going to happen. And also there's the problem of housing asylum seekers in this type of accommodation. It's not fit for purpose. It's designed for soldiers to stay there for a few weeks or a few months and then move on. It's not designed to house asylum seekers. The asylum seekers need facilities, and these facilities, in many cases, like the ex-army barracks, have been abandoned for up to 20 years. So they would need to be refurbished. How much is that going to cost? And they'd need to be modified in some way. And then, of course, you'd need the permission of the council, because if the council, I think the council, no, maybe it's just the MOD. I don't know. Is the MOD exempt from council rules? I don't know. But there would be, of course, massive costs in doing this, and we don't even know if it would work. Like we saw it with the Bibi Stockholm, where the Tories tried. Remember the Bibi Stockholm? It seems so long ago. The nostalgia for the Tory days, where they were like trying to put people on barges, and they were saying, well, this is an alternative to housing people in hotels. We're getting people out of hotels and we're putting them on the Bibi Stockholm. We're going to have 500 people on the Bibi Stockholm. They started off, what was it, like 40? And then there was the outbreak of listeria and they had to close it. And then they said, well, don't worry, we will clean it up and get it going again. And they were still paying for it. The government were still, the taxpayer was still paying for it. Don't say the government, because the Tories are happy to spend other people's money. I find it so ironic when people bring up that quote from Margaret Thatcher saying, socialists like socialists like running out of other people's money. Well, what would she say if she heard that the Conservatives spent £700 million on a Rwanda scheme which sent 4 people voluntarily? I saw some old cruise ships. I saw someone say old cruise. Yeah, there was a plan to put people on old cruise ships. The Tory Reform want to put people in camps. Andrea Jenkins wants to put them in tents. So filling streets with tents. That's going to go down really well in the local area, isn't it? Camps as well. Just concentrating the asylum seekers in camps, that's going to work really well, isn't it? And once again, if you concentrate people in an area and you don't have proper facilities, you're going to have outbreaks of disease. You're going to have crime or rioting taking place. You're going to have fire hazards. The reason why the hotels were used is because they're easy to modify. Instead of a room for one person or 2 people, you stick in a few bunk beds. So then you move from 2 people occupying a room to 4 people, or maybe even more than that. When it comes to the food, well, you already have the facilities there, a kitchen for cooking, or you bring in catering food from outside catered for the restaurant, for the hotel, ex-hotel. You can close down a lot of the services, so swimming pools or gyms or saunas and stuff like that. That's all gone. You can reduce the staff because you don't need people doing room service. You have very basic room service. So if you're running a hotel that's on the edge, it's a lifeline. But it's expensive and it attracts very unsavory figures outside protesting. So I think the government's solution, of course, will be to move people into rented accommodation, but that's going to have its own pitfalls. All the housing that was built in Rwanda were sold. Where did the money go? Puzzled. Yes. I think somebody in the Rwandan government made a lot of money. And probably somebody within the Conservative Party made a lot of money as well. Because it's, 700 million pounds. Like, we can't even fathom 700 million pounds. Like, we think of £1 million as a lot of money, but 700 million pounds. To do what? Where did this money go? And remember, the Conservatives are happy to spend other people's money because it's not theirs. I have often said, when the Conservatives or other political parties mess up, the party should pay the cost of the disaster. Because it's them that took these decisions. Nobody forced the Conservatives to do a deal with Rwanda. They knew it wasn't going to work. And the reason I say that is because otherwise they would have gone and asked for legal advice. They have an attorney general. They had an attorney general. They have lawyers, very expensive lawyers. All they had to do was ask some of these lawyers, look, we're thinking of sending people to Rwanda. Do you think that's legal? Do you think it's lawful? And the lawyers, if they're worth anything, would have come back and said, actually, no, you can't do that. Like, even I could see it, and I'm not a frigging lawyer. I could see that it was unlawful for simple reasons that Rwanda is not a safe country. That's it. You don't need to be Perry Mason to discover that Rwanda is not a safe country. 2 reasons. It's at war with its neighbor, a cold sort of proxy war with its neighbor. And also the fact that the UK has provided asylum to people from Rwanda. Like, you generally don't provide asylum to people from countries if those countries are safe. Like, why would you? We don't hear about many French asylum seekers or American asylum seekers, not yet anyway. How about Swedish asylum seekers? How about New Zealander asylum seekers. I don't know. Maybe some of them exist. They're very, very rare because these countries are not collapsing. Their governments are not dictatorial. They're not at war with other countries. When it came to Ukraine, of course, asylum seekers were brought in from Ukraine, refugees. There was no problem there. There was even a safe route. They were shooting refugees in Rwanda. There you go. Japanese asylum seekers. Although, if you leave Japan, you're going to miss all the cool stuff from Japan. So I'd love to visit Japan, maybe one day. I seem to remember hearing that either the Rwandan government or the development company got to keep the money. Could be wrong about it. Look, we're talking about the Tories, so somebody made a huge amount of money out of it. Maybe not all of the money. The Labour government said that they were not going to continue with some of these payments, so some of these payments will be stopped. But of course, there will be some sort of agreement, because if you tear up the contract, it's likely you'll have to pay some sort of compensation. So it's probably cheaper to pay the compensation than to continue the contract. But why have the Conservatives not suffered any consequences for that? They suffered some political consequences, but why didn't the Conservative Party have to do a whip round to cover this £700 million that was lost? They could have done a bit of went in with a begging bowl to one of their billionaire donors. Said, hey, can you give us £700 million, please? Why? Because we wasted it on Rwanda. Why did you do that? Because we wanted to out Farage. But you can't out Farage. Yeah, we know. We'll remember next time. Can we have the 700 million, please? That's the way it should be. Then they'll remember next time not to try and out Farage. One day you'll need to do your video without Vader mask on. One day I will. And it will be safe for work. We need a public direct democracy type of vote on the subject of migration, my view. I'm in two minds about that, because people like Farage would weaponize it and convince people, we need to vote to leave the European Convention on Human Rights. Let's have a referendum on it. And of course, people would not be informed on... When I talk about Brexit, often I say the people didn't know what they were voting for. And that's not to be insulting. That's not to be condescending. What I mean by that is people were not informed. What should have happened, if you're going to do it like a referendum, I still think it should have been Parliament that decided, because parliamentarians are paid huge salaries. They get lots of money. They have teams around them to inform them. Whether they listen or not is another thing. But they are there to make these difficult decisions. Members of the public don't have... I'm not an expert on the EU. So I wouldn't be in a position to make a reasonable decision to leave or stay. And I've been following this for many years. James O'Brien, who's presented as a guru on the EU, even he wouldn't be... I would say, if you were to ask him, do you think you know enough about the EU to make a reasonable decision on whether to stay or to leave? Most people would say, if I'm not sure, then I'm going to remain. I don't know enough about the consequences of leaving. But the public were not informed. People did not receive a booklet. It would have to be pretty big. A booklet from an independent body explaining the positives, the negatives of the European Union, but also the positives and negatives of leaving the European Union. And now we're talking about, we need to have a referendum on leaving the European Convention on Human Rights, so the Tories are going to stick it into their manifesto. Not that it really makes any difference with the Conservatives, because they won't be in power, but Reform UK, maybe. And Nigel Farage wants to emulate Donald Trump. And Donald Trump is about tearing up the rules to benefit himself and to benefit his friends and donors. And Nigel Farage is going to do exactly the same thing. I can guarantee it. If he gets into power, he'll start talking about we need to leave the European Convention on Human Rights to stop the boats. It's not my fault. It's the blob. It's not my fault. It's the French. It's not my fault. It's somebody else's fault. And it'll always be about blaming someone else. Or he'll distract. Don't look here. Look over there. Like what the Tories have been doing. Anyway, let's move on. I promised some good news, so need to up the pace a little bit here. So here is some good news. Maybe it's good news, maybe not. It's good news. Depends on your point of view, I guess. Surprise good news as government borrowing less than forecast. So high tax income and national insurance contributions meant the state had to borrow less. The government borrowed the least amount of money in 3 years last month, official figures showed, in a surprise bout of good news for the Chancellor Rachel Reeves. Rachel Reeves needs some good news from time to time. She's had a pretty bad year. Not since July 2021, in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, was the state borrowing so low, according to data from the ONS. Increases in tax and national insurance in receipts meant public sector borrowing was £1.1 billion in July, meaning that there was a £1.1 billion gap between the government income and spending. That borrowing is less than half the figure, 2.6% expected by the economists polled by Reuters news agency, as self-assessed income tax was £600 million higher than expected. But borrowing is still £6 billion higher in the first 4 months of the financial year, which started in April, and the same than in the same period in 2024. Despite the £2.3 billion drop in monthly borrowing when July 2025 is compared to July 2024, the state still spent more on the cost than more on the cost of that lending. So this is some good news. So borrowing is down, which means that there should be more money available so you don't have to pay the interest, but you have less money needed to service the debt. But it should mean more money for public services, right? Means that Rachel Reeves will not have to put pressure on people to get back to work because things are good. You notice how the politics is always, the situation is terrible. People need to get off benefits and into jobs. Oh, the situation is wonderful. People need to get off benefits and into work. There's no reason for you to not be on benefits. There's a job available. The economy is doing really well. You need to get back into work. There'll always be this excuse, this pressure, which is nonsensical. So there is some good news there. I wanted to cover our next story, which is, of course, Donald Trump. Donald Trump is going after his enemies, it seems. Donald Trump has a lot of enemies.
Great to have you, Mark.
Well, that's a little bit loud. Let me bring it down a little bit. Donald Trump is going after...
So what more?
No, it's not too loud. Okay. A guy called John Bolton. John Bolton was a pretty significant figure during the Iraq War and the consequence wars that the United States engaged in. But it seems that, and he was part of the Trump administration first time around. I don't know why he joined it, because he was supposed to be on the opposite side of Trump. But, Trump is going after his enemies.
What do we know about the reason why the feds are looking at John Bolton's home and office?
Well, they're looking for breaches of national...
It's a really nice house, isn't it? It's like something out of a serial killer show.
National security. They're looking for classified documents which they believe may be at this Bethesda house of the former National Security Advisor John Bolton. It all relates to his book published in 2020, The Room Where It Happened, a book that was due to be published during the first Trump administration, but that first Trump administration managed to seek a delay or a block to the publication because they were concerned that it breached national security. Now, when Trump lost the last election, Biden became president. That probe was dropped. The book was published, and it was certainly explosive and very critical of a man who John Bolton was once friendly with. He served as Donald Trump's national security advisor. This is the home of John Bolton. We're about half an hour north of the White House as you drive in Bethesda, Maryland, and as you spin round, you can see quite the commotion here. A lot of media have gathered after this news broke at about 2 and 3 hours ago now here that the FBI had turned up. There is a light on inside one of the rooms there. Quite a few cars outside. We've seen the FBI walking in with boxes. I suppose the assumption will be that they will fill those boxes with potential evidence and then bring...
It's a hit job. It's a hit job. Donald Trump is not happy with Bolton because Bolton said some truths about Trump and they're going after him now. And this is really concerning because I'm no fan of John Bolton. He's a warmonger. He should have been behind bars a long time ago. But it means that Trump is going after people who disagree with him. Now, I don't know whether John Bolton will go to jail, but potentially he could. And if there are national security issues, trumped up charges of national insurance, national security issues, he could go to jail for a very long time. May even be executed, I don't know, for treason or something. Treason against Trump. Gareth, thank you so much for that super chat. Sorry I'm late, folks. Went out for a walk this afternoon, saw St. George's flag, passed out, woke up, rang the Guardian, made up with my super duper secret Antifa sleeper cell, and now I'm back. You're not supposed to publish that. It's no longer a secret. Thanks, Gareth. Oh my goodness. Hey, where's the blue murder tent, Max? Yes, I love that reference. So that's a reference, of course, to when Nicola Sturgeon was being investigated for, was it a camper van that wasn't declared or may have not have been declared? I don't remember the details of it. Or some sort of donation. It was a donation within, so her husband made a donation to the SNP or something like that. So the police investigated and they had a blue murder tent in the garden looking for evidence. Maybe it was buried in the front garden. You know, the money was buried. I don't know, was it the alleged corruption was buried in the garden, so they had to dig it up. Hopefully they had, sniffer dogs to cadaver dogs or whatever. Anyway, those were the days, weren't it? Bolton reminds me of a walrus. Don't offend walruses, they're cute. They found the tea bags, Max. But this is concerning. Donald Trump has a list of enemies that he wants to see gone. And while it seemed to be just rhetoric some years ago, it seems that maybe it's a bit more than... Now, this could be just having a chilling effect. The head of the FBI is a Trumpist. So he either did it himself or did it as a result of Donald Trump's direction. So I'm just surprised it's happening now because Trump has been in office for a long time. Is this, or maybe this is like Trump has a list of things that he needs to do to distract the public from the Epstein files. It's like, hey, they're talking about the Epstein files again. Quick, send out the FBI to arrest, who is it on the list? John Bolton this time. Yeah, send out the FBI. That will distract the public for a few days. And then we'll be able to hopefully hope that they will forget about the Epstein files for another week or two. And then we can just pull out another name, another person to be hounded by the authorities. And then if things get even worse than that, then I'll declare war on China or something. That would definitely see a distraction last until the end of until 2028. And then I just cancel the election. So guys, I want to finish with one final story here, which is heartbreaking. I just want to let you know before we go to the video what's happening in Gaza. There is a famine has been officially declared by the United Nations, and here are some pictures from it. Apologies in advance for some of the...
Mariam is the embodiment of the starvation in Gaza City. She is 9 years old and weighs just 9 kilograms. Her family are displaced, their stomachs empty.
Mariam began showing signs of malnutrition while we were in Rafah. At the time, the hunger wasn't as severe as it is now. Because of the extreme starvation we're facing now, she lost even more weight.
At a malnutrition clinic in Gaza City, they're measuring emaciated limbs. Today, the internationally recognised threshold for famine has been formally met here. 1 in 5 people with extreme food shortages, 1 in 3 children acutely malnourished, and 2 in 10,000 people dying from lack of food.
Be in no doubt that this is irrefutable testimony. It is a famine. the Gaza famine. It is a famine that we could have prevented if we had been allowed. Yet food stacks up at borders because of systematic obstruction by Israel. It is a famine within a few hundred meters of food in a fertile land. It is a famine that hits the most vulnerable first, each with a name, each with a story, that strips people of dignity before it strips them of life.
Famine has been declared for the Gaza governorate, which includes Gaza City. In this part of Gaza alone, 280,000 people are facing catastrophic starvation, destitution and death. The IPC believes the situation is even worse in North Gaza, which has been under intense Israeli attack, but it couldn't collect the data it needs. It also says Deir al-Balah and Khan Yunis will soon formally be in famine too, almost the whole of Gaza. Over the next year, it says, 132,000 children under 5 are expected to suffer from acute malnutrition, including over 41,000 severe cases of children at heightened risk of death.
This is why it's so important that this war comes to an end, that there is some sort of agreement between the Palestinians and Israel, and that Netanyahu is removed from power, that his government collapses, that he eventually goes to prison. The Israelis want, ordinary Israelis want this ended. The Palestinians want this ended. This is why it has to happen. It's heartbreaking because none of this is necessary. But it's all happening because Netanyahu wants to hold on to power. He knows that as soon as the war is over, as soon as all this conflict comes to an end, then he will face his day in court and he will likely be removed from power. And his government will collapse. There will be elections. But he has such little concern, so much contempt for human beings that he's prioritizing his own political career over the people that are suffering in Gaza and the Israelis who are suffering as a result of what's happening as well. And where is Donald Trump? Donald Trump is talking. Donald Trump could end this tomorrow. All he'd have to do is say to Netanyahu, it's over. Stop. But he doesn't give a crap either. It's so frustrating because you have the evangelicals in the US who are always on about, being pro-life, but they have nothing but contempt for these people because they have the levers of power. They could pressure Donald Trump into doing something here, but they don't care. Is it racism? Is it indifference? Is it hypocrisy? I don't know what it is. They simply don't care about the deaths that are taken on a daily basis. Now, the Israelis have said that none of this is happening because, there is no famine in Gaza. We can't confirm it because Israel will not allow journalists in. A few journalists who are allied with Israel, with the IDF, have gone into parts of Gaza, but they're not independent journalists. We know that they're there for propaganda reasons. And they said, there is no famine, there is no famine. So if the UN is saying there's a famine, and Israel is saying we're not going to allow journalists in to check, then we have to go with what the United Nations is saying. Because there's no alternative. If you allow journalists in, then they can confirm whether there's a famine or not. But it's not just the United Nations, it's a whole range of charities, including Save the Children, UNICEF and others. They have said that, or organizations as well as charities, they have said that a famine is in place. It's happening right now. I remember growing up as a child, and some of you maybe who are about my age would remember Band-Aid, Live Aid, where there was the pictures day in, day out of starving children in Ethiopia, the famine in Ethiopia, and how we needed to do something about it. I remember as a kid growing up, we were talking about it at school all the time. How can we help? What can we do? Children looking at this saying, what can we do? And this was not a man-made famine. It was a natural disaster. This is a man-made famine. And it seems Donald Trump and Netanyahu, their only goal here is to drive the people out, to level the place, raze it to the ground in order to make it available for Israeli settlers. Max, have you seen the propaganda videos? Max? Yes, I've seen a lot of stuff. I can't show it here on YouTube. I've seen a lot of stuff on both sides. I've seen videos of videos put up by Hamas. I've seen videos put up by the Israelis. I've also seen videos of ordinary people struggling. I've seen videos of Israelis in Tel Aviv protesting against this, who want to see it end. Their concern is both for the hostages but also for Palestinians. But the people who have the levers, the people who can actually control the situation, who can bring it to an end, Donald Trump and Netanyahu, are doing nothing about it. Now, some people will say, well, what about Hamas? But Hamas, we keep hearing, has been destroyed. So what can Hamas do? Unless they've surrendered. But once again, even if you're to destroy Hamas, you will not destroy the idea. And it's not just Hamas who are in Gaza. There are other organizations as well, other groups. But even if you were to kill all of the Hamas leaders and every member, every time there's a bomb goes off and civilians are killed, this creates more fighters, more people with a grudge against Israel. War is not the solution. Gareth, thank you so much for that super chat. The Israelis say there is no famine. Then they say, actually, there is a famine, but it's Hamas's fault because it steals aid. Yes, yeah, this is the narrative. It starts off with there is no famine, there is nothing like this happening. Then when there's more and more evidence presented, well, okay, there is a famine, but it's not our fault, it's Hamas's fault. Okay, but why don't you provide, because there was not this issue before. When the UN was distributing this aid, Hamas were not stealing it, or if they were, it was in very limited ways. But if there is chaos during the distribution of this aid, it's because people are starving, because they have nothing. There wasn't this problem when the United Nations were in charge. Now this new organization, which is backed by the Americans, is creating chaos. And maybe it's doing it by design. Again, thanks for helping keep up so many, helping to keep so many of us sane. Thanks, music. Thanks for your support. It's heartbreaking. We try to look away, but it's impossible because, and then people will say, well, what about the other situations around the world? But this is garnering most of the media's attention. There are, of course, famines taking place around the world. There is suffering and plight of civilians around the world as well. And if they come up on the news feed, then I'll respond to those as well. I'm not picking and choosing. This is what's front and center at the moment. Let's hope that it's resolved, that the people can live in peace, and then we don't have to talk about it. We can talk about something else. How many countries do you know who would keep the national security minister who presided over the worst national security failure in their history? Yeah, that's a very valid point, Gareth. So the Israeli security minister who failed on the 7th of October 2023 is still in his position, or if he's not in that position, he's still a member of the cabinet. How did the Israeli government, there should have been an investigation and those responsible should have resigned. But of course, that was not the case because that would have brought down Netanyahu's government. The Western powers used to go in and overthrow regimes that were problematic. They don't view Israel as problematic, though. They encourage them. I believe the RAF are still doing flights, or they're maybe not still doing it. Until recently, they were doing flights on behalf of the Israelis. Secret filming of the area on behalf of the Israelis. There haven't been sanctions applied to Israel from the UK because there's still a lot of business taking place between Israel and the UK. One thing is about weapons, but economic sanctions is a completely different thing. And it's not just me just mentioning economic sanctions. There's a whole list you can find is about 20 or 30 Israelis, people who are former members of the Israeli government, people who are members of senior people in society, in Israeli society, who are calling for economic sanctions against their own country because they said this can't continue. They're still doing it, Max. The Air Lamy flights, something like that, yes. Because Bibi knew about the 7th of October. It's never going to end, Max. I hope you're wrong. I do hope this will come to an end and it's a peaceful solution. Because as we know, if there isn't a peaceful solution, it will continue forever. And it's not, it may be in Netanyahu's interest, but it's not in the interest of the Israeli people. And this is why they need to remove him. This is why his government needs to fall. For the sake of the Israelis, they need, because they're losing friends and allies around the world, they're becoming a pariah state. And this is going to harm them eventually. It's going to take a lot of reconciliation to overcome what's happened here. And ordinary Israelis should be extremely angry with the government. Of course, they're backing the government at the moment because they see it as a war. And during a time of war, the public rally around the government. But this is damaging Israel on the world stage. It's ruining their reputation. It's turning them into a pariah state. And it's going to be terrible for ordinary people. It won't be terrible for Netanyahu. The worst he'll get, he'll go to jail and spend the rest of his days there in luxury, relative luxury. That's the worst that'll happen to him. But ordinary Israelis are going to suffer the consequences if there's no peace. I'm not just talking about economic problems. Gareth, once again, thanks so much for that. Why don't they highlight all of the other famines in the world, they ask. Why doesn't the BBC have a dedicated news feed for sad famines, I reply. Yes. Because with these people, they don't care. Well said, Gareth. But these people don't care about famines. They're angry that you care about this one. They don't care about famines. It's the same way as when you ask the right wing about, and I'm way over the time. I'm going to end in a few moments. When you ask the right wing about homelessness or something, they'll link it to immigration. Well, we should be looking after our own before we look after immigrants. And then if you say, well, would you be willing to pay more taxes to deal with homelessness? Would you be willing to invest in more infrastructure, houses and stuff to deal with homeless people? Then if you ask enough questions, then they'll come back to, well, these people are just lazy and they're just drug addicts or drunks or whatever, and they don't deserve a home. So as long as you're not talking about immigration, these people have nothing but contempt for homeless people. Mr. Potato Bread Man, thank you so much for that super chat as well. Thank you for that support. So we're going to finish here, guys. I want to say thanks to everyone who came on. Thanks to the moderators for doing a wonderful, providing wonderful support. If you're a member of Patreon, if you're a member of the channel, I'll be on the post-stream chat on Discord in a few minutes. Hope to see you on there. And I want to say thanks to everyone who sent a super chat tonight. Thanks for your support. Before we go, we have a light moment here, just to lighten the mood somewhat, a funny moment to lighten the mood, because it has become a little bit dark. But this should be enjoyable and enjoyed. Hope you do. It's an old one, but it's a good one.
Welcome to Broken News. New laws come into force today that mean people who use their mobile on speakerphone setting in a public place can be shot on sight. The radical new law was rushed through Parliament in an unprecedented move to crack down on morons and twats. Our reporter has more.
TV show The Apprentice has a lot to answer for. As well as giving a platform to cranky, crinkly, cockney walnut Alan Sugar, it also featured arseholes using the hands-free setting on their phone for seemingly no reason. But whether on the back of a bus, in the quiet coach of the early train to London, or at the funeral of an old man who died in a fire, these no-hand nuisances will get their comeuppance from today. New legislation now gives police powers to immediately execute anyone seen conducting a call in public on their speakerphone. The ruling also allows lethal action to be taken if a business wanker speaks loudly into a large Bluetooth headset about some bullshit deal or something in a pret-a-manger, and if anyone plays music out of their phone speaker. It adds, if you must play music in public, at least have the decency to use a Bang & Olufsen Beosound A5 with 360-degree sound dispersion, or at least something with a better bass response than a potato. Opponents have called the laws draconian and over the top, but it's been confirmed today that they can fuck off. Back to you.
What a lovely story. That's all from Broken News. You're up to date.
We all know it, don't we, guys? We all know somebody like that. So have a great weekend. I will see you on Tuesday, same bad time, same bad channel. We may have a special guest. I'll keep you posted on that. If I don't, have a wonderful weekend. Take care. See you soon, and good night.